Welcome, Paul. Thank you so much for taking time today to join us. It's really exciting to have a guest on that we both know from different avenues, and it just really shows the reach of the outdoor coaching community that is becoming more connected, and was part of the reason why we started this podcast. So it'd be great if you could just introduce yourself to our listeners and watchers to get things kick-started.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you. First of all, it's an absolute pleasure and honour to be here. I think I wanted to say that I've had the both privilege to know you before and work, in some different connections with you. And so if I had to do a timeline of my journey, I would definitely have this podcast on my timeline. So it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you. So who am I? Paul Jefferies. I'm the founder and co-owner of Pebbles Associates. And we're really an executive coaching, team coaching and one-to-one. And we do some strategic consultancy with our clients. We're based in the Peak District, in the beautiful Derbyshire Peak Districts. We're sort of at the foot of the Peak Districts near Ashbourne, sort of gateway going up. So the high peaks are just that little bit sort of further north for me, about half an hour's drive. And we really work with leaders, chief executives, managing directors, managers or owners. And those are really sort of very two areas. We work with corporate people within a lot of manufacturing and sort of, which is where some of my background is from, but also the not-for-profit, the charitable sector. And we effectively run a Robin Hood model. We have a corporate rate, but equally we offer a charitable rate, and one off-pay pays the other. That was a very deliberate decision when I set the business up, and I wanted to work and offer coaching and outdoor coaching to as many as I could, really, and recognize that there's some very purposeful work going on in the charity sector that really could benefit with some of our insight and skills. So that's sort of, for me. In terms of that, I'm married. I have 4 children, 2 dogs and 6 chickens. And so I have 2 Labradors, which I'll touch on later. One does come with me, sometimes coaching, client-led, and I'll explain a little bit more about that as we get nearer the time. But yeah, the other one is too young and too excitable to be coming on a coaching expedition. We really work across 3 levels. So we try to work with the individual, the leader, and this is a very conscious approach I take, working then with the team, or their team, the senior leadership team, and then we try to talk about the wider context. And I can elaborate a little bit more on how we bring nature and outdoor coaching into that context, particularly when we come to the systemic, the wider nature of business. And really, I've had 32 years in manufacturing, in business. I started off as a industrial designer and product designer, and ended up working in the packaging, paper, food industry. And I've led all sorts of roles, from shift management right through to divisional director, 400-500 people responsible, large turnovers, and so on and so forth. So, and really, as I say, I made the change about 4 years ago to come out of that. But that's my background, and how I'm kind of my introduction really to that.
That's really great, and it really does sort of set us up for today's conversation and today's chat about your background and your move into the world of not just coaching but outdoor coaching. Obviously, this is our focus is the world of coaching in the great outdoors. It's wonderful that you are outdoors as well. Unfortunately, up here in Scotland, it's lovely. It's a lovely day, but it's incredibly windy, and obviously being on the coast, it makes it a bit hard to be able to hear. So I decided to wear nature today. I don't know if you can see it, but I've got bees. It looks good.
Like it,
but so just thinking about nature and the outdoors, and this is a question we ask all our podcast guests, so anybody who's listened to any of our previous podcasts will know this question well, but it would be lovely for you to share your earliest memory of being outdoors and what it is about being outdoors that you personally love and where your passion lies.
Sure. Yeah, no, thank you. It's a great question, Alex. So really it's about, I go childhood, and it's about being free from responsibility, I guess, is where I'd start this story. So I'm the eldest, born to a blind mum. So I was born in 67 and had a lot of my informative years through the 70s. Had an amazing mum, and she lost her sight at 19, and she had me when she was 25. And she was a marvelous lady. She sadly passed away now, but she taught me an awful lot. And I guess really a lot of that kind of growing up, it gave me real skills that I've explored as a coach, my own self-reflection. But you can imagine, as the eldest, I would enter a room holding my mum's hand, and I'm talking memories of sort of 5 or 6, and I became very good at communicating, observing, and just sort of, being kind of, in her company and having to be her eyes and ears and so on and so forth. And that really, really helped me with a lot of informative, skills that I learned from her, and I'm blessed to have had that. However, there is a clear sense of that getting out to play in nature was massive for me. I was born and brought up in the foot of the Cotswolds, so around Malmesbury, Tetbury area. And, really for me, when I could get out, that was my freedom. And I always remember being out in the fields. I had no responsibility. I didn't have to worry about mum. And, I could just experiment, and the expansiveness, the freedom, and I guess it's that lack of responsibility. It was a place of sanctuary for me. And I just have the fondest memories of building dens and climbing trees and just engaging with nature in lots of ways. And that's where I kind of, would go. And I would disappear sometimes, making sure mum was okay. And I may not come back for 7 hours, but I'd always come back for tea time. Typical kind of, young lad. But, I was around the River Avon, around water, paddling, just experimenting. And that's really where my love of nature and the outdoors came from. And it was that sort of wonderful sort of yin and yang around being at home, being responsible, but then stepping back outside. Memories as well come back as I always remember my pedal car. Can you believe I had a noddy pedal car? And I used to pedal this car down Watts Lane. I still remember the Watts Lane, and it would get covered in cow muck. And apparently I was almost fastidious about every day I would have to wash the pedal car because it would be covered in cow muck. But that was a really big thing for me, and it's that memory. I possibly could be 3 or 4. I was at nursery. This wasn't even school at this stage. And so memories such as that, really, stick there with me. And then probably the sort of darker side was I ended up getting to primary school, and boys and children being as they are, I couldn't read very well in my early years. Mum wasn't able to read. My father was building a business, doing really well, but he was always out early, and so nobody really sat or read with me a great deal, and I fell behind and I really struggled. Remember going to school one day, and children being children, there was a bit of teasing, and I got frustrated. I'm 5 years old at this stage, whatever, early years, and I left school. I just ran out of school, through the gates, and I headed to the fields, which was the place I felt safe and I kind of knew. I have to say the village did find me after quite a few hours, thankfully, but I probably could have lost them for hours because I knew those fields like the back of my hand. And it always strikes me as interesting that I headed for that place, and I've always remembered that. I'm pleased to say that I subsequently had an amazing teacher who got hold of me a little bit another year or so on, and you know, here I am proud to say I've got my degrees and my master's degree and so on, and I did catch up, but yeah, very happy memories of being in the Cotswolds and being out there. And for me, I find it a creative space, but it's that space to think. It's always been the place I go to be, just have that reflection time, that thinking time, and that place for me just to order my thoughts, sort things out. And it's always just been a very safe space for me. And I understand that for others, that's not always the case. And we always look at that as coaches, but for me, it's definitely a very positive space. Yeah.
And thank you for sharing those insights. The memories, as you described them, were just so vivid. And there's just something when someone is, you know, you're transported back there, and you were there riding your multi-pedal car, getting covered in cow muck again. And these are the memories, the stories that shape us. And this is almost what is part of what makes us unique as individuals, as coaches. And then clearly the choices that we make as we move into the work world and choose our profession. And it would just be just taking it like a step further now, and that transition into your more kind of your coaching journey, your backstory. And then what came to create Pebbles Associates. And I'd love to hear about the name as well, Pebble. Clearly it's a very part of the natural world.
It is.
And if there's a story behind that as well.
There is, you're right, Anna-Marie, there is. And I'll build into the, So it was 2018, my journey to outdoor coaching. I had, it'd been a very busy time in this period for me. I had been running 2 factories, very large, a lot of people, and there was a lot of change that had been taking place and so on. And effectively, I look back on it now, there was a burnout situation for me. It was in the middle of 2018, and one evening I was at work, and it presented initially as a tear. I didn't know, as a mini stroke. It wasn't. What it was later discovered is hemiplegic migraines, and they do present initially. So I was effectively sitting at my desk. I had started to felt that my face and my left side was falling. My speech was becoming a little impaired, and I was beginning to lose feeling in my left arm. And for me, it was always on the left side. Apparently, it tends to be. And mine comes with aura, so I will get an aura normally just before, and it's effectively, quite scary, especially initially the first large one I had, and I obviously realized that something wasn't right, and I got myself into hospital, and a really clever first, I checked out my heart and realized that was fine, I'm pleased to say. And a very clever young neurologist continued to work with me. I was in hospital for a few days, and he diagnosed the hemiplegic migraine. And he effectively said to me, we went through outlining my world as it was then, my lifestyle. And I said, look, I'm getting up at 5 a.m. I was effectively driving for an hour and a bit, and spending 12-hour days, and then driving another hour and a half home, eating food. And I was in this real hamster wheel of not seeing nature and not really engaging, and just constantly moving through what I needed to move through. And he said, you need to change. Paul, you have to change your lifestyle, or all I can predict for you is more of the same. And it is not going to get better, they'll get worse. And to a point, you really do need, and I would encourage you, he said, to look at your lifestyle and change. As this happens, I took the time then to realize that there was a restructuring program coming, and I put my name forward. And this was at the end of 2018 into 2019. And I put my name down. I said, as a director, I want to go. And I took the brave decision to go on my own. I wasn't really too sure what that meant for me, but I decided it was something I needed to do, and my family were very supportive. And really, I started to then decide, well, what do I need to do? I knew I wanted to give back. I knew I wanted to work with people. And so I effectively used a tool that I'd come across through work. It's called Ikigai. It's a Japanese term, which gets you to effectively look at different aspects of your life. So we can look at the passion. Well, my passion was the outdoors, which I hadn't engaged with for some time. And I knew I needed to get back to nature. And so, you know, I looked at that. Then my mission was that I wanted to connect with people, and I wanted to give back, and I wanted to work with people. My vocation really was that sort of that piece around, you know, leadership and how could I give back and help. And my experience, what did I have to offer? Well, I had 32 years of leadership, management, and I'd done some coaching. I'd had the benefit here of a coach. I'm very pleased to, her name was Eleanor Sturdy, who'd coached me in corporate world. And she'd helped me to see that there were perhaps other ways and other things and we could, you know, look at. And so using this, I almost blended it all together. And I thought, well, how do I turn this into, you know, something that works for me? And coaching came out when you almost do the Venn diagram of blending all this together. I could see that coaching for me and being outdoor coaching was where I needed to go. And the power of being outdoors had really helped me in my past life. I had experience around management and leadership, 30 odd years. I wanted to give back towards the second part of my career and work with people. And I could see a lot of people like me in corporate world, working very hard, very diligently, and not seeing the benefit of being outdoors, and almost in this cyclical bad habits or behaviors around, you know, just staying on this treadmill and not breaking the cycle. And so Pebble was born, Pebbles Associates. Back to Anna Marie's question of Pebble, it's something I worked on, and it really comes from being the pebble. As it moves forward, it rounds, it polishes, it becomes luster. It sort of almost becomes this sort of evolving piece of stone that has got big lumps, and it starts maybe in the Highlands of Scotland, and as it moves down the river, the pebble becomes, you know, a more rounded person, and it gets a luster and it starts to shine, and you know, those types of things. I loved that, and I thought that pebble works for me. And then on the second level, I was really keen to go with it, because when you throw a pebble, and I do this sometimes when I'm coaching with people, into a water, the pebble sends those ripples out. And for me, I'd like to work with people around, we're the pebble, but it's the team, the ripples from that. As a leader, we affect our team, we transfer, we project things, the team back to us. And then there's that wider context, that systemic thinking that really, in theory, if I throw a pebble into the Atlantic, it will go on and on and on and on and never really stop. So, and I feel that in life, our words matter, our actions matter. And so by being the pebble and seeing people in that sense, I try to evoke that thought of getting people to see that we're not just a single entity, we are connected in every way. And that's where Pebble comes from. And I guess I wanted to be the pebble in the pond that is the ripple of change. It's very evocative, but it means something to me. And I try to use that as part of my coaching outdoors, and using water and pebbles and so I hope that answers your question, Anna Marie. So, but that's really how Pebble was. And then my professional qualifications, the last part is, where do you go to learn coaching and just the general, you know, and I thought, well, I'd had a relationship with Henley Business School. I'd done my master's, my MBA there in 2009. And so I did some research, and they did a PCIC, and I signed up and applied, and I qualified in my professional certificate in executive coaching, and absolutely loved it. And that was the beginning of my journey. And I bumped into Jonathan Passmore, who we all three of us know. And I declared my interest very quickly to him that, hello, you know, I'm Paul and I'm here to learn my coaching credential, you know, and my build my knowledge. And I'm interested in outdoor coaching and I want to practice outdoor coaching. Who should I speak to? And he was very kind enough to offer your two names. I think, Alex, you were coming towards the end of your dissertation, your MSc, and Anna, I know you'd been practicing and Jonathan was aware of your work, and one or two others. And I started, I guess, to get into this world and practicing myself, and it's just been an amazing journey. And here we are 4 years into the journey. Amazing business, fabulous clients that I'm getting to work with, and I've created a new, I guess it's the neurologist. I've done it to a point. It's a journey, it never ends, but I really do look back and I'm really proud of that. I had to do something for myself and I did it. And here I am 4 years on, and it's not been easy. I'm not going to deny that. It has been some dark times when clients or things haven't been coming, or things or whatever. You know, I have 4 children, I have bills to pay, but do you know what? I stuck with it, and the belief and my passion for it. And I guess that's what people enjoy, in my enthusiasm and, you know, to be out there and doing it. And I was lucky to have some original clients who stuck with me right at the beginning, and yeah, it's built and built and built.
There's so much there in what you've said to inspire people who either have just started their journey to kind of, as you said, keep going. And, you know, even when it's a bit tough, especially at the beginning, getting clients, keeping clients, but also people who are thinking, you know, we actually have quite a lot of listeners and followers who are already maybe coaches and haven't necessarily taken the step outdoors yet and are thinking about it. Is it something I want to do? And there's so much to inspire there. And what you were saying resonated with me so much. I use the Ikigai process as well myself when I was thinking about what to do. Exactly like you, what's my passion? The outdoors. How can I make that work for me? How can I turn that into a vocation using my experience? And it's really interesting hearing it, because my journey started back in 2016, so only a couple of years really before you. And it's evolved in a similar-ish but also different way. And I think that's also something to really kind of sort of take away from, and the insights that you're sharing there is everybody's journey is different. There's some similarities, some very different. I mean, Anna's background is very different in terms of the military, but we're all working in the outdoor space and we're all doing coaching in the outdoor space. And it would be really great now to sort of turn it around and think about your approach. So, you know, you've got your business up and running, you've been, you know, in this space for a couple of years now. What kind of approach do you take to your outdoor coaching? What kind of tools and techniques do you use? You mentioned the pebble there, which is great. Maybe if you could share some other sort of examples and stories of some of the tools and techniques that you use, and maybe the locations that you choose to take your clients to.
Definitely. Yeah, no, thank you. Again, great question. So much to explore there. I mean, I get my business is very client led. I'm going to start here with, almost in my world of business and corporate, and is sometimes they need to work and give my clients and get those leaders to give permission to come outside almost and break out of, you know, the room, the classroom, the boardroom, or what have you, and say, please just come out and experience a new environment where you can, you know, have permission to stop. And this is really important for me. And I see it so much, particularly in business, of leaders and people just trying to get that permission. And when people do, there's no stopping them. They love it. But it's getting them to understand that, you know, why don't we go outside and try something? So that's one of the things. So it's very client led. I take my contracting, I guess that's the second area to say in terms of my approach. So for instance, I would say for all of the listeners, I took the point of taking it seriously, as I think, so I'm a qualified first aider. I took an outdoor first aiders course. I'm a qualified mental health first aider. That's just so the point that I wanted to be sure that as a mental health first aider, I could recognize the signs and then signpost people on. I'm very clear of my boundary there. You know, it's important to recognize signs and move people on. It's not mine to diagnose or anything, but I thought that was important, so I did that as well. I have my insurances. I took my public and professional indemnity insurances and outside and all of those sorts of things. And then I'm making sure people wear the appropriate clothing, they know where we're going. I encourage, particularly to work in areas that are public places, perhaps, particularly if it's early while we're learning and building our relationship. So parks, lakes, around walks, where it's a little bit more public. I will always encourage my clients to make sure I have an emergency phone number for them, so I can contact somebody in the event that something was to happen. And I make sure that, that they are made somebody aware of where they are, that they're with me and we're going to this area and so on and so forth. I think these are all really important parts of being outdoors. We're in a slightly more not as controlled environment, and we have to be aware. So I want to know if a client has scared of dogs or is perhaps not so comfortable with massive open spaces. So perhaps a woodland setting or a water setting maybe, but so again, trying to explore, and then also understanding any underlying health issues that a client may have. So I will adapt the walk to the pace, the ability. And so I have some clients who will, as we do, we go up to Kinder Scout, 632 meters up, no phone signal on the top of the plateau. You really do need to have the gear, rucksacks, stuff with you and know what you'll be able to do to get off that. And then I have park walks in the Staffordshire, Derbyshire area. So I will do very much lakes, forests. Macclesfield Forest is a very popular, it's a beautiful forest there. And then we'll do also Dovedale, the Manifold Valley, Staffordshire Moorlands around here. So these are really different environments, but I could make it work for that client led. I guess at the end of the day, I'm using nature as a co-coach. That's the way I see it. I love nature as my co-coach. And what that means is using metaphor and evoking awareness by using metaphor that might be, I guess if one of my clients, which I have examples of, wants to do big picture thinking and look at horizons and scanning, we'll go up a bit higher. We might go to the top of a hill so that we can see the expanse, and using open questions and open metaphor to try and see if we can evoke that what are you thinking, what's coming to you. If we're looking for detail or we're looking for something, we might drop to a woodland or a forest setting and look at the path, and we maybe look at detail that we've not seen before. And again, we're trying to use some of those types of examples. My loveliest one, I think, with that was walking through a wood, and a client happened to pick up a leaf. I can't tell you how many leaves there were around this client. I mean, we're talking, thousands. It was an autumnal. Picked the leaf up and walking with this leaf, and I remember saying, why this leaf? What you pick this leaf up? You're really holding it quite strongly, quite tenderly. And the client was very much, I saw this leaf, it drew me to it. And this leaf actually represents letting go. And what this client described was an amazing story of how her family were growing up and they were leaving home. And she was holding this leaf so tenderly because in the end, she knew she had to let the leaf go, and the leaf would drop to the floor and it would, go back into the earth and almost part of that natural cycle. And she, didn't want to let that leaf go. And we had a lovely conversation about, her holding on to her family for as long as she could, but knowing that she has to let that leaf go and let those children go and seek their lives and fortunes in a tender way. But it was just noticing, and that coaching conversation came out of how tenderly and almost motherly she was holding this leaf. And that's an example of using something there with nature, and just, it was a beautiful conversation and a really deep, meaningful for that client. Other ones, I've had a lovely story with a chief executive. He was building some strategy, and it was a very staged strategy. It's a real what I would call in my world continuous improvement. Improve and then hold that improvement, and then go again, and then hold it and go again. And we talk about change very much like that. And he was articulating this, and I suddenly noticed that we'd just come up a hill, and actually we'd gone up a hill, plateaued, gone up another hill and plateaued, and he was actually describing almost the terrain he was walking on. And I drew this to his attention, and he just found it really evocative. And we started to build, and we actually were almost then going back down, so this part of the hill is this part, and then I'm going to hold this in the business, and then I'm going to go again with this. And this hill became almost like a linear drawing of his strategy over the next couple of years. And again, that was really, again, a useful tool for sort of just bringing out awareness. Water, I love walking with water. Had another leader, and I asked him, how would you get across this lake? If we picked a point on the other side of the lake, which is the goal, or the task, the aim that you're searching and looking for, how would you? And he immediately said, well, I'd jump in a Sunseeker, down like you find at Poole in Dorset, and I'd steam across this lake, he said. And we got to think about what that would look like. And I said, but what about if we got on a sailing boat and we just tacked the wind, and we found a more gentle and, way, and he hadn't really thought about, and we discussed how that links to his business and the impact of that. And again, that evoked a new insights and new awareness for him, and just getting him to slow down and think about a different way of approaching the same task. So those are sort of some of the things. My style is quite courageous. I like to sometimes step into some powerful questions and try to see if we can get at what may be happening, and just really noticing comes, I think, from my childhood, observing, noticing. And I find it when we're walking side by side outdoors, the silences are more comfortable. I really sense, and I've always felt that. And sometimes I've said to my clients, perhaps would you like to walk on? I sense you perhaps need to think about this. And they have. And then I will just drop back, and then I'll pick them up a few minutes later, or 5 minutes later, and say, what's coming up? What else has happened for you? And they'll then begin to share some new thoughts or insights or something a bit deeper. And that can be very powerful. It's very difficult to do that in a room. In fact, virtually impossible unless you're going to leave the room. But there's something very supportive about walking alongside somebody and not even saying something sometimes, but just noticing their pace. I have one particular client. I remember second or third session, I offered him to sit down. I thought it was a perfectly polite and part of my learning. And he turned to me and he stopped and he said, no, we must walk. We must walk. It's important to walk. We mustn't ever stop. And I was like, wow, this is really curious. And so we've explored that in him. But I find, I don't know about you guys, the stoppages are powerful. When you're walking, when someone turns to you and looks you in the eye and stops, they can be incredibly powerful moments. And there's something about that for me that I find that really useful, that co-coaching almost, and it's not written, it's just getting used to practicing that and using those adaptive I guess styles and and then I guess the other part is just getting people to reflect, and I can see them visibly calm down. And sometimes I will notice that people get out of the car and they're a little bit flustered, and I'll just talk. Part of my session might be just speaking for 5 minutes while they just come into the present, and just you can see nature visibly having its effect, and that's really wonderful. And And then I also look at rhythms, and I'm very keen to talk about business, and I try to relate it to my passion of business and corporate. But I also talk to leaders about autumn. Autumn traditionally in the business world is strategy time, budget time, and it's a chance to take stock for the next year ahead. And for me, leaves fall off the trees, they replenish the ground, and they get ready for the next season ahead, and they start to hibernate. And for me, there's something about writing budgets and leaves coming down the trees. And so it's a chance at the end of almost the end of the year ends for me around autumn. And then when we go into winter, it's a period for planning, dark nights, make sure you've got the resources. Have I planned? Have I got everything? So I talk to my clients about that period in winter where we're gathering, we're storing, we're getting the resources ready for the year ahead. Spring is obviously action, doing, new birth, blossom, talk about that whole part of getting out there in business, making things happen. You've got all those resources that you've planned and making it happen. That goes on into the summer. And then I like to talk to my clients about being away at August, reflecting, relaxing, taking stock of the year, ready for the budget season and the fall and the leaves coming off. And there's something about that, almost that cyclical nature of that nature and that rhythm. And it's using those types of things that for me, sometimes I get business people and it makes it almost that bridge that I'm out here in nature and you're talking to me about nature things, but then they go, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. That relates to my world and business. And it almost to some degree, I'm trying to act as a catalyst in my coaching approach to bridge and show them that there's a lot to be had out here in nature and learning that can be done. So, and that whole trees as well, and the systemic nature of trees and the nurturingness of how they look after each other. I like to use that as well in the sort of wider systemic thoughts for leaders and so on and so forth. So, for me, it's a busy environment. You do need to be aware of where you're going. And as I say, what people's needs and requirements are. There's a bit more going on. And so you need to keep people focused. But I haven't really found anything too difficult. The thing I'm now beginning to do is adapt into team coaching and getting people outside into teams. It's really messy. I'm learning. It's quite adaptive at the moment. But where I am finding it's very beneficial is using constellations. So I use the technique of constellations, and because it's more expansive in a field or a woodland, I can get people to, I can place a value or a statement on a bucket in the middle of a field, and I can get people to stand physically how they feel in relation to that statement, that value. People are far more creative outside. People lie down, people go across the other side of the field, people turn away, people start to do all sorts of great physicality, and then I'm able to sort of ask them about, that's interesting, why have you come all the way over here, this side of the wood or the field? And because Paul, I don't associate with that value at all. In fact, I find it difficult. And so we sort of use all that sort of type of expansive thinking about nature and trying to evoke something in people, and as we know, get a new insight. So I hope that sort of answers some of those questions and gives you a feel for how we're doing.
Definitely, and more. there was a lot packed in there, and really just that thread of actually, before we even get outside, it's the practicalities that really need to be taken care of. And then once I'm outdoors, actually, what does a session look like? And every session is different, and it's very much integrating with what is there and what feels intuitive, and really reaching into the questions and the metaphors and this idea around conversations around strategy, including within leadership. I know strategic planning and strategic management is something that I come up again and again and again, and it's often it's tricky. It's a real getting your head around strategy and how to bring that to life and how to look at it differently, as opposed to a bit of maybe a cut and paste product document that's going on, or a process that leaders feel they have to do all themselves and they can't get anyone else involved. Is yeah, there's always a lot of work that you can do around strategy. I've definitely found from the conversation that I've had with leaders. And I loved your description of the lake there, and this is my military background coming to the fore. As soon as you say there's a lake and your task is to get to the other side, and you have got 4 tires and ropes and planks and and straight I'm off in, like, I need to build a raft and get to the other side. So yeah, the Sunseeker, the sailboat, or the raft that's been cobbled together by a variety of things. No, but thank you for that insight into your approach. And it would just be helpful to just maybe dial into like a couple of the key benefits that you have observed in your clients from being outdoors. And we've had some wonderful examples, with the leaf in the lake, and then the Steps Mountain, and just kind of any kind of real key tangible benefits. It would be great just to dial into them.
Yeah, definitely. So I think for me, the one I see a lot is around, it's this classic part of it's that creative space and being able to, as one chief executive said to me, and it will make us all smile, is, I knew this, didn't I? That was his opening statement. Wow. He said, what you've done, I knew this, but you've ordered my thoughts, you've prioritized my thoughts, and you've helped me through metaphor to sort of just see them in a different way. And that's really helped me. So that would be one benefit that I certainly see, is that creative space is getting people to think, no distraction from work or phones or doors opening, but just being able to order their thoughts in a very, and my sessions will, an hour and a half, etc., out in nature. That's one benefit I see a lot. I see people building their self-awareness and their confidence and that confidence that comes from knowing that this is okay, I've realized this about myself, exploring it, and actually starting to accept that that is something in me that I am and I need to be, or moving that. That's something I see a lot around confidence. And then the other ones are sort of around that whole, I don't know, there's something about brain body working in unison. I kind of see people walking along, and there's something almost like a metronome about the walking that to their thoughts, and there's that pace, and you see them then starting to create and having time to stop, I think. And that's really, I wish somebody back in 2018 2017 had shown me what I know now, and I could have stopped, and maybe I wouldn't have suffered a hemiplegic migraine, and somebody could have invited me outdoors, because actually that's what I needed, was just to stop and be allowed time to think about my challenges and what I was doing, and that's really the portal or the catalyst I want to be the person who turns up and says, it's okay to stop. Let's look at that for you, and then allow them and just see that almost settling into their mind and having the confidence to say, it's okay. I can do this. I can do whatever it is my challenge. But they've realized that perhaps they needed to stop and get off the train, as it were, as I call it. And that's the power I see in people. And just being away from distraction and stuff, you see them almost, I don't end up now. People say to me, when are we booking the next session, Paul? When are we? It's almost like they're almost inviting themselves to come again. And there's a real eagerness for it. I'm lucky. I have one client who's been with me since the beginning. I mean, been coaching outdoors for 3 years, and I contract every year and say, do you want to do something on your own, or no, could we just have 3 sessions this year? And so actually this person comes out with me quarterly or every sort of 3 or 4 months. and they get so much from it because it's a chance for them. Well, he calls it having a conversation with myself. That's what he calls it. And I'm acting as that questioning sounding board, nurturing, challenging. But he just loves being outdoors and that whole benefit from it. So, yeah, I don't know if that helps. So that's, yeah.
It's always really great to get these examples. We said at the start, you know, our listeners love the examples, and people who've been doing the coaching for some time now will listen and think, I had a similar experience with somebody, or you know, that's the benefits I can see in my clients too. And it's fascinating because just thinking about what you've said, it absolutely sort of mirrors and mimics the research that I did a couple of years ago. Sure. All those words, those kind of conversations around the benefits of it. And I think that's why Anna Marie and I connected so well, because she was part of my research. But then just being able to embrace that as the coach and being able to, as you said, be that kind of conduit and that person that sort of guides and enables our clients to have those conversations with themselves. Absolutely. And realize that they do know the answers, they do know it.
Yes.
And whatever nature does for them, to mirror that or metaphor that or mimic it in some way. And I loved at the very start of our chat today, you talked about permission, and you've used the word allow quite a number of times as well. And people, you know, realizing that once they're outdoors and they've given themselves permission to be there, all of those benefits will then start to kind of flood over them and actually become quite remarkable and you know. Absolutely. We talk about awe as well, you know, people experiencing awe out in the outdoor coaching world. And you're right, these are things that I personally don't believe you can bring out indoors. Yeah. You can try to provide some nature connection indoors, but there's nothing quite like being outside and, as you said, co-partnering and having nature be a coach in the relationship and the conversation as well. So it's just, I mean, it's just lovely to hear your stories and your experiences. Just to kind of start to wrap up for today's podcast. And one thing we always also ask our guests is any recommendations you have for resources that either were really useful for yourself, that you think others might find useful, especially maybe for people who are maybe early on in their journey and wanting to know a little bit more about not just coaching, but coaching in the outdoors, the benefits of the outdoors. What kind of resources are there? And also, signpost yourself as well. Where can people find you and Pebbles Associates so they can connect with you after they've listened to our podcast today?
No, that's wonderful. Yes, no, I mean, so for me, I think certainly there are a number of, I mean, and I know you guys are probably aware. So I would recommend In Praise of Walking, a massive book I love and sometimes refer. I love that connection back to, I've always been quite interested in history and archaeology, but for me, and I guess this comes out in my team as well, what In Praise of Walking, you know, really does, and Shane O'Mara, is that connection back to when we were ancient times of being out there in family groups on the plains, gathering food and you know, hunter-gatherers, telling stories around the fire. I think we cannot deny as humans that we're trying to get back to something. And I do hope that perhaps through the pandemic, we've seen people reconnect with nature. My belief is read things, you know, such as this, the In Praise of Walking. It will open your mind up to that connection. The green spaces, the blue spaces. There's something great for people's well-being, mental, you know, health, and then with the support of a coach, a professional coach, even helping you to think about those insights and move forward. The other one I love, and my last, is The Hidden Life of Trees. I love this. And there's just something so lovely about, you know, Peter's story of really fundamentally how in Germany he was almost, you know, chopping trees down and that relationship changes as he learns and he gets this amazing insight into the life of trees and how they support each other in communities, how they give life to older trees and help saplings, and this whole kind of, you know, biosphere, this interconnected world that we we have there. And I love that. And I would recommend, again, if you're thinking about the wider system and our connection, such as the pebble in the pond, etc., then that would be two I would recommend. I have to say, I would love to see more outdoor the coaching at Henley. Anna Marie, I keep mentioning at any opportunity that I can to my some of the Henley that we need to see more. I was very happy and loved attending the day with Anna Marie at Henley Business School. It was an amazing group. I think it really, and I'm still in touch with some of that group. So I'm keeping the network and trying to see if, you know, again, like us all, reaching out, spreading the word to get outdoors and try outdoor coaching. And so I'd love to see more of that. And I try wherever I can. If some of the guys at Henley are listening, then please more of that. You know, those are some of my things. And yeah, Pebble, we can be reached at pebbleassociates.co.uk on the web. We have a website. Look us up. And there's a whole host of things there. Or just contact me, Paul at pebbleassociates.co.uk.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And indeed, it was a really great day at Henley Business School. There was a group of what, I think about 27 of us. I remember starting the day indoors, and I think I lasted 45 minutes. I was like, I feel like a fraud. We're getting outside.
I love that.
when we were planning it, it's like, well, we've got the space, we've got the room. How much are we going to be indoors? I'm like, nah, probably not.
Not a lot. And the weather was so nice. It was just perfect, wasn't it? It was, yeah. And you did such a great job. We just need more of that. And I guess the last year, I don't know, how do we, my challenge to myself and to us as a community is perhaps we need to get a symposium of us together somewhere. It's like an idea. It came to me months and months ago. And I thought, how do we just meet like-minded people for get some people to present and have a coffee and a get together, because there's got to be something in that too, and get a bit of a movement going. I don't know, that would be wonderful.
And it's we've had conversations around this very much so. Right. And you know, we've kind of is the opportunity for Henley Business School or elsewhere, and I know there's definitely kind of a drive and appetite for it. Yeah. So yeah, watch this space, and yeah, if anyone wants to get involved with the event management behind it, you know, let's get a core team. Let's get talking.
Give me a shout.
And that's extended to the listeners as well.
Yeah,
putting it out there as an intention.
He'd love to be involved in something. It's just, you know, I think it's important that as we spread the word, and that's how these things begin to take shape, and you know, they, you know, get there, don't they? And that's really what, you know, I love it, and I've had a great life of the benefit of it, and now really living it myself, and no turning back. It's just, you know that saying, it's such an old saying, isn't it, in business, but you know, why didn't I do this years ago? But I'm also a great believer in time and place, and so I then check myself and go, no, now it was the time when it happened, and things happen for a reason, and I love that too. So yeah, it's been good fun, and I'm still enjoying it. Well, I was out coaching this morning, so it was great.
Oh, always a good day in the office. Definitely food for thought, and let's continue the conversation in that vein. A massive thank you for coming on and having the conversations, and I really hope that it's inspired our listeners and watchers just to hear the inside story of a coach's journey, and really highlighted how everyone is different. We all have our unique memories, we all have our unique life events that unexpectedly appear. Yep. And then actually, how can we navigate through them? Yep. And just hearing others' stories, and this comes back to the stories, like listening to stories is so valuable. And as a culture, I kind of believe it's almost there often isn't that time and that space to really listen and to hear into what someone is saying. It's almost, we're very driven, it's very doing, it's very pragmatic, it's very action orientated, and actually taking that time to sit and reflect on, you know, this is kind of throwing out to anyone who's listening and watching, like, well, what is your story? What are the key milestones in your life? Where do you want to get to? What coach do you want to become? What skills can you draw on? And very much dialing into this Ikigai Framework, which I will admit was news to me.
Ikigai,
but thank you, a big thank you for coming on, Paul, and spending time with us today. And, you know, for our listeners, thank you so much for listening into another episode. We've got an even bigger back catalogue now, series 4. So please do dip into our other interviews and check out the massive array of guests that we've been lucky enough to kind of hunt out. And, you know, there will be more, series 4, series 5, series 6, watch this space. So that is us for today. It's a wrap, and enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are in the world and whatever time it is. And hopefully it will involve a little bit of time outside.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So if you enjoyed what you've heard, like it, share across your network, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and LinkedIn community page, the Coaching Outdoor Podcast. Thanks so much in advance for your support.